Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a early impression video of a fragrance that is a 2024 limited edition release from probably one of my favorite niche houses in the game right now, Les Indemodables, and this is called Vanille Havane Coeur de Oud. So you can see I have a little sample here from one friend and another little sample here from another. So thank you to my perfume god people who have allowed me to test this. I am going to let me drain this sample right here and do some fresh sprays. So I have worn Vanille Havane as my actual scent of the day for the last like 4 or 5 days now, I would say. In fact, I wore this to court yesterday, which I do have to apologize for my sporadic, let's say, postings on YouTube. I know I was very consistent, and now it's just going to have to be a little sporadic with all the craziness going on in my life. But hopefully that is all being resolved very soon, and I will be officially divorced and moved on to the next chapter in my life. But it still goes on as we speak. So I'm kind of in one of those situations where I'm a little bit at the mercy of how things play out. So sometimes I'll be able to post, sometimes I won't. So Vanille Havane Coeur de Oud is actually the third iteration of Vanille Havane. There was the original, which I have a review of on the channel. I will say though, my thoughts have changed a little bit since that review. I said I found the opening too sweet. I no longer do, believe it or not. I think that as this has matured, I'm getting more of the tobaccos and, you know, that sort of weird raisiny quality that comes through, and less of the kind of sweetness that I was getting early on when I first kind of got to know the fragrance. They then issued Vanille Havane Extrait, and I would love to smell that one day. That's the one of the three I've never smelled. And now Coeur de Oud, which second flanker, third iteration of Vanille Havane. Vanille Havane is obviously, clearly, Les Indemodables' bestseller. It's their most popular one. I understand, you know, it was kind of like when Amouage started to do flankers. Les Indemodables never did flankers before this. Now they already have 2 on Vanille Havane. I'm kind of, I don't know on the whole thing. Obviously, sales matter to them, and that's why they decided to do it. And they only made 500 bottles of the Coeur de Oud for the entire world, okay? So, Oud is obviously in the name. Les Indemodables as a brand is famous for sort of highlighting a particular material. So they will say, here's the patchouli used in patchouli noisette or something like that. Here's what makes it special. And they'll send you the ingredient along with it. So this one, it was Oud that they decided to highlight. And that's one of the reasons why they limited it to 500 bottles for the entire world. Is Oud is kind of one of those materials that is limited and can change depending on where you get it from. What part of the tree it's cultivated from. Year to year they change. Even if you get it from the same plantation, it can still change. And so they decided to just do this limited edition, one run, one batch. Once the 500 bottles are gone for the entire world, they are gone. And it's not a cheap proposition. They are selling 50 ml bottles. I believe they're 50 mils. I'm pretty sure. 50 ml bottles for 420 euros. So probably with taxes, it's going to be, you know, pretty expensive. And so you can see they're presenting it as a limited edition. It even has limited packaging, you know, a new limited edition packaging. So that's kind of the route that they decided to go with this. Now, oud is the main ingredient, and what they've decided to do is they've decided to use a plantation oud, which it's a plantation Cambodian oud. Part of me, especially since in my mind Les Indemodables is such a top-notch brand, part of me really wishes that they would have used a wild oud, that they would have tried to source a rare wild oud, especially since it's only 500 bottles. I would have hoped they would have been able to do a wild oud, but I understand why they didn't. Cost constraints and budget constraints and all this stuff. What is interesting, though, is that they do claim a new extraction process through what they called ultrasound and fractionation of this rough and unique diamond. I think that's what they said. Here, let me read it directly from the Les Indemodables website. So here's what they say. After a long process and many attempts of ultrasound extraction and fractionation of this raw and unique gem, we were able to present the fine-tuned extract to Antoine Lie, who's the perfumer, by the way, one of my favorite perfumers of all time, and he's kind of turning into the in-house perfumer of Les Indemodables, who immediately fell under the spell of this ingredient with an unprecedented olfactory profile, exceptional longevity, and olfactory complexity. So they talk a little bit about how they use their research and development team they patiently cut and polished, presenting a beautiful harmony between the fruity, aromatic facets in the top notes and the more woody, smoky, and animalic in the base. So that is how they present it on their website. But to me, the only problem that I have with this is that it doesn't smell unique or special or extraordinary, or it's not, it's not like I was wearing the actual oud oil that Russian Adam provided when he sent me the sample of Oud Taiwan. And that oud oil is one of the most mind-blowing, amazing oud oils I've ever smelled in my entire life. This one, when I smell it, I'm just kind of like, okay, I enjoy it. But is it something special? Is it worthy of almost $500? In my opinion, no, it's not worthy of that because it's not special or unique enough. But I do enjoy the fragrance. So let me take you through the journey of how it kind of acts. So first of all, it's plantation Cambodian oud. So what ends up happening when it first hits your skin, is you get a little bit of this slightly sour, but very almost like charred. To me, it smells like charred cherry wood. Okay, so you get this charred cherry wood feel of Cambodian oud. If you're worried about ouds being big, fecal, animalic, if you heard people like Eugene describing the night as shit coming out of the back of an ox or something like that, this is not that at all. Okay, you do not have to worry about that. This is by no means super barnyard or super animalic or funky, or you get no blue cheese from this. Usually that's more of the fermented touches in the oud that come from the Indian ouds and stuff like that. Okay, so usually don't get as much of that in Cambodian oud, which is what they decided to use here. However, I will say in the first 5 to 10 minutes, even though they say the woody and barnyard notes are in the base, the way that the fragrance breaks down, as the hours tick by, it turns more, you start to get bits and pieces of the original Vanille Havane into the dry down. You don't get the smoky, woody, charred notes of the oud in the dry down. What you get is more of Vanille Havane to me into the dry down. In the beginning, what you get is more of the oud notes. So right now, I just sprayed right here, and I've got about a 2 or 3 hour dry down right here. Yeah, and already, it's starting to change. And as the hours tick by, it becomes more and more, it loses a little bit of that oud composition. It's still there in the base, kind of holding everything together, but really the first, especially I would say the first 5 or 10 minutes, that's where you're going to detect, I would say, the most animalic parts of the oud here. And so you're going to get just a slight bit of rot. I would say just a little bit. The rot gives off a little bit of something that will just make you pause. It's not super funky to my nose. It just almost makes you wrinkle your nose or something. It's almost like when a dentist is drilling for a cavity. They get to the cavity, and maybe depending on how bad the cavity is, there's like a couple brief seconds of maybe something that smells bad as the cavity is being extracted, right? A little bit of a foul stench. There's a tiny bit of funk here. But then you don't smell it anymore. It starts to kind of go away. 5 to 10 minutes in, that funk is almost completely dissipated in the air, is how I would describe it. I don't perceive very much funk here at all. You can get a little bit of it in the first 5 to 10 minutes if you really, really focus, okay? But it's not a big foul stench or anything like that. So I think this is actually a really good starter oud fragrance for someone who maybe wants to take the next step, but they don't want to jump directly into the artisanal fragrances. They don't want to go buy Aries Ladoré, Ensar Ouds, Bortnikovs right off the bat. This is a good jump between the designers and then really the hardcore once people start really getting into the oud game. Now, the bigger part of the oud here, to my nose anyways, especially in the opening, the first half an hour to 45 minutes where you get more and more of this oud, is there's this smoky aspect to the burned wood, this charred burned wood aspect, which is really, really appealing. So here, it almost starts to remind me of like Bachor added to clothes. If you've ever seen Middle Eastern people perfume themselves, they literally stand over the Bachor and let the smoke go into their clothes. There's a little bit of that feeling of the smoke applied to the clothes. So imagine the smoke is rising, and literally as you're standing over the smoke, it starts coming out of your clothes, all over, you know, your holes for your arms, the top of your neck. You know, smoke is just kind of rising out of your, literally rising out of your clothes. And that smell of smoke, but not just smoke, almost like smoke on fabric is really how I want to describe it, because there are some fragrances where it just feels like you're standing around a bonfire and inhaling the smoke directly from the burning wood. This is a little bit different. It's almost like a secondhand smoke. It's like you're smelling it on a fabric, you know, on a shirt. The smoke was sort of soaked in by the shirt, with the undertone of that sort of cherry wood, cherry smell starts feeling very slightly syrupy, and some sort of spices that start to mix in. I detect cardamom. I don't know if anything in the spicy realm is listed, but there's definitely some sort of a spice blend here that was used. Cardamom comes through pretty heavy in the opening to me. So just imagine, almost in isolation, I could see someone pointing out sort of the cherry wood giving off this like cough syrup feel. If nothing else is going on, that is all part of the smell is the problem. It's hard to pick out like, this cherry cough syrup feel. Trying to isolate the notes are tough because this is so well blended. It was done by a master perfumer. You know, Antoine Lie is, in my opinion, one of the all-time greats. But that woody, burned, charred cherry wood sort of feel. So imagine all of this. You get the burned, charred cherry wood. You have the smoke on fabric, but it's a very restrained smoke. I think that's what I was trying to kind of get across. It's very reserved, I would say. It's there, but it's not in your face, black, you know, billowing smoke. No. And then there is almost this like fruity profile that starts to kind of jump in and out. And I can't put my nose on what fruit accord that it is. A couple times I had a chance to wear this to bed. Actually, I've worn this to bed because of the 2 decants that I had from multiple people. I had a chance to wear it to bed multiple times before doing this video, and then again kind of today. My real scent of the day is going to be Vanille Havane again. It'll kind of mix nice with the Vanille Havane Coeur de Oud, I think. But I did have a chance to wear it to bed a couple times, and I had a hard time really putting my finger on exactly what that fruit note is. A couple notes that I made, once I got apricot, dried apricot. Other times it had this blackberry-like feel, almost like the blackberry in something like, Jubilation 25, or there's a little bit of that blackberry feeling that tends to come through. And then other times it was more of like a plummy, syrupy, but that could also go with that cherry, cherry wood, cherry, syrupy cherry-like feel. And I also feel like as the first half hour progresses, the litany of fruits sort of pass your nose at different times. So if you smell this and go, blackberry, what the hell is Ramsey talking about? Give it 10 or 15 minutes, try it again, see if the sort of litany of fruit notes seems to cycle through this fragrance. Very interesting. And usually that happens within the first 15 to 30 minutes in my experience, my limited experience in wearing this. Again, I don't have a bottle. This is just an early impression video, but it's almost like a fruit rotation, to my nose, but always bracketed by the charred wood, the Cambodian oud, and the spiciness. Now, like I said, it isn't a deep, dark, black smell. So don't think the color black when you're smelling this. I would say it's more of like a byproduct of what black would potentially smell like, if that makes sense. It's not black. The charred woodiness is not black. It's more of a byproduct. That's why I was trying to describe it potentially on the fabric. So that's also why that Bachor image popped in my head immediately whenever I started to think about the way that the smoke feels here. Now, the other thing I found with Cambodian oud, and it's not so much here, but I get it at times, is if you could imagine the smoke you're smelling here is almost coming across as burning more clean. Maybe that would be a better way to describe what I'm attempting to describe to you. It's not this deep, dark, black smoke. It's almost more of a burning clean smoke. Imagine like fuel or jet fuel, or like imagine like a fuel additive, right? Maybe some of the additive to the fuel added a little bit of this Middle Eastern style spiciness that's kind of coming through, but the burning of the fuel feels very clean in one respect. And the other image that came to mind is old wood. So old wood, old treasure chests that were kind of buried and found. For example, take the story of Napoleon always traveling with his mobile library of books everywhere that he went, right? And I imagine those came with him in like chests or something along those lines. I have no clue how they carried those out into the military battlefield with him, but I imagine they were some badass chests. And then just imagine when the shooting starts, one or two of them got lost in the earth for hundreds of years. Then someone realizes what it is, they find it, they dig it up, and they realize that on one side, the chest was burned. The wood is kind of charred and decayed and like fragile, okay? So most of the chest you smell is this ancient sort of buried wood, but there's almost like one, maybe like a corner of the chest that is a little bit charred and a little bit black. That imagery of not the whole thing charred, just a piece of it, so you still get sort of just the ancient wood, and just a small piece of the wood on the corner, a little bit charred, is how this smells to me. Like I said, doesn't smell like the whole thing has just been put over a fire. Now, there's definitely this spice accord at play here. Les Indemodables, I think, is playing quite coy with the note listing. They only list cacao, vanilla, and jasmine, and that's pretty much it, and the oud. I would put a lot of money on some sort of spice kit being used or something that Antoine Lie created, because in the first 30 minutes, it's pretty prominent, especially the cardamom. The cardamom really comes through here, and obviously in a Middle Eastern style fragrance, I think that makes perfect sense. But I would also guess maybe some nutmeg or something else adding an aromatic touch. I don't know. I have no clue what it is. I could speculate, but I don't know. Clary sage or something giving it a little bit of this slight aromatic touch. Whatever it is, the combo of the spices and the oud used here almost make this, to me, into a totally different fragrance than the original Vanille Havane. I haven't smelled the Extrait, but I assume the Extrait goes in the same direction. This feels like a big departure. And I almost feel like they used the Vanille Havane name for like selling point. You know, they thought maybe people would buy it more. And like I said, it does come out later on as especially deeper into the dry down. Once you get into the 5 to 6 hour mark, from my experience, that's where it really starts to change more and more into Vanille Havane. Well, not change into, but Vanille Havane really starts to come out more in the later dry down, I should say. But the opening, when you smell this, you may even be asking yourself, what does this have to do with Vanille Havane? You know, it's funny because for the longest time there has been this debate, especially in Fragcom, where it's kind of this debate between artisanal perfumery using the best ingredients and just allowing those ingredients to do the talking and do the work for you, or having an actual perfumer create a fragrance that uses a very rare and special oud, but then use his or her blending skills to kind of put it all together. And what's a better route to go? The problem is many times, many of the big name perfumers are not working with things like real oud oils. You know, the brands that are employing those big name perfumers, they want to save money by creating some sort of a oud accord, right? They don't want them using a high quality oud. Even if it is a plantation oud, it's much more expensive than them mixing something up with Norlimbanol, black oud, and all this other stuff that they're doing, right? So it's the perfumer's job to sort of create this oud accord out of cheaper ingredients. So that's what a lot of the bigger name perfumers are doing. So what makes this so interesting, and you could argue as to how high quality the plantation oud really is. You could also argue the percent of oud that Les Indemodables decided to use. I believe the percentage in here is much lower than you would expect. I think it's under 2%. According to the Les Indemodables website, they say that they only used 1.3% of this oud ultrasound extract, which again seems very low, especially I recall when I reviewed Frederic Mall's The Night, which I have a review on the channel if you want to check out The Night, but Dominique Ropion said that contained 21% of the formula was Indian oud, which, you know, for the thousand or thousands of dollars you're spending on that fragrance, that makes a lot more sense. for almost $500, 1.3% of Oud. You know, you could argue that they really turned this one into a big money making operation. Is what it seems like to me. I feel like they could have gone heavier, but I think to me this puts to rest the conundrum, the argument between what is better, at least in my mind. You know, I think this is kind of like, do you want the artisanal perfumer or do you want the actual French trained, professional, classical French trained perfumer creating an oud fragrance? I am not impressed with the work of a professional perfumer using ouds historically. You know, my favorite oud fragrances are from the artisanal houses still. And the thing is it's not just any perfumer who created this. You know, it's not just any perfumer. It's what I would consider to be one of the top perfumers in the game, Antoine Lie. You know, I think his work is impeccable. I love his outside of the box thinking. I love how he's willing to go against the grain. I love how he's willing to tell sort of the industry insiders, fuck you, I'm doing it my own way. You know, he's somebody that I really, really respect. And as far as like still working perfumers, I think he's one of the best or the best right now. So it isn't like they got some scrub to put this together. You know, they got an absolute legend in my mind. And still, I'm not that impressed, I must say. I like it. I would wear it. If you gave it to me, I would wear it. But if I was going to spend my money on this, I wouldn't. You know, I wouldn't give Les Indemodables 420 euros, whatever that comes into dollars. Now, what I will say is that, you know, spending the last couple years on what I would call a serious oud exploration. I did a lot of work on oud on the channel. So if you go back over the last couple years, you'll see tons of videos from brands like Arise La Dorée, Bortnikov, Ensar, Messoud, Maxim, which Maxim Perfumes is the son of Dmitry Bortnikov, and he sent me his new oud fragrance, and I will review it on the channel as soon as I can. Prin, Agar Aura. I mean, there's so many of these, you know, artisanal brands that I've discussed on the channel, and you know, once you've gone down that rabbit hole, it's hard to almost go back to this. Is the problem? I would say if all you've smelled is Tom Ford Oud Wood or Versace Pour Homme Oud Noir or something like that, then this very well may really, really impress you. It is definitely a next step up from those type of oud creations. But if you're going from the Bortnikovs, the Arige, the Ensars to this, you may not be as impressed as you're hoping for. You know, I think I do think it's a good representation. So I think they fulfilled their goal for what they were trying to do. But I don't think it's something that's going to impress the hardcore oud heads. Let me put it that way. So for me, I expected more. Let's say, especially at 420 euros, I expected more. I would say that the first 30 to 45 minutes, let's say the first hour, are by far my favorite part of this creation. By about the 1 hour, 1 to 1.5 hour mark, more of what I would maybe call like a clean oud profile begins to emerge. So that smoky aspect with the darker tinged corners I was discussing earlier start to burn off a little bit. And it's almost like now the outer bits of the chest have kind of been removed. And once you open it up, inside the buried treasure is this glowing piece of oud that everyone is fawning and falling all over themselves and throwing themselves on the ground to genuflect to this oud. Everyone's talking about how amazing it is. But when I smell it, you know, it's all I smell is like a cleaner oud that is sort of burned away. One of the more interesting parts of the oud seem to almost burn away, like the outer parts of the chest and being consumed in a fire. And then underneath, that's where Vanille Havane tends to start to come in. That's where you start to pick up the cacao, you know, the vanilla, hints of tobacco, stuff like that, underneath all of that. So this is also the point where some of the sweeter aspects of Vanille Havane start to really appear. A couple hours in, they really start to appear. As I said, it almost feels late into the dry down where much more of the cacao and vanilla really start coming through. So it's almost like the clouds have parted, and this is what is revealed, and it just doesn't impress me like I was expecting it to. So go watch some of my reviews by Arise Ladore or Ensar or some of those. See how impressed I was by some of the ouds that they are using. The crazy part is I like the fragrance. As I've said, I think Vanille Havane Coeur de Oud is a good perfume. But I also feel like maybe Les Indemodables saw the dollar signs here, and they saw a way to make, let's say, $200-300 a bottle profit. That's just my opinion. I have no inside information on that. I'm just guessing, but my guess is this is probably one of the biggest profit margins for them. Let's just say you take 500 bottles at $200 a bottle profit, because they're charging $420. I would be, shocked if they had that much ingredient money into there where they're not making at least $200 a bottle, but I could be wrong. But let's say it's $200 a bottle. Well, you just made yourself $100,000 off of this limited edition release. So full disclosure, as I said, I don't know what their profit margin is. I'm guessing, but either way, it's a pretty nice gig, and it seems like that they started to calculate the dollar signs out while creating this, because I think they could have done more, especially knowing the night did 21%, and this is your oud, and you've constantly said we're not going to do an oud, and then all of a sudden, bam, you do an oud, and it's only 1.3%. That was a little disappointing to me. So yeah, I think it's just missing some of the depth, and I think that there just isn't enough oud used here to justify the price, because that is what people are paying for. Some people say you can't talk about price. Price is, it's different for everybody. And while that's true, I feel like on a value basis, when you value this over here versus that over there, you have to talk about price, because that is what you're comparing against. It's your comparative. And so you could have a $30 fragrance you love more than the $1,000 fragrance, but the price gives you at least that benchmark to compare. So I like the fragrance overall. It's not a bad fragrance. It's just once you get into this stratosphere, the guideposts, your expectations of sort of what you're comparing it against change. And it's not just, is it a good or a bad fragrance? There's so many other factors to me, and this one just tends to fall short. I will say that I'm glad that Valerie and Remy, the founders of the brands, decided to do an oud finally. It's one of my favorite ingredients at the moment. I think it's probably the greatest material. It can be anything. Oud can be anything. Go watch my Russian Atom interviews to see us talk about all the ways oud can change and smell like different things, and the different types of ouds, and the species of the tree. There's so many different variables that can change with oud. It's so fascinating and complex, and as they say, truly magical. That's what Les Indemodables says on the website. So yeah, check out the fragrance. Let me know what you think if you've had a chance to smell it. I know it's a limited edition and hard to get your nose on, but for those of you who have smelled it, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. As always, I love you guys. Thanks for watching the videos and the support you guys have given me over the years now. I'm really honored and blessed to do this. I appreciate you guys tuning in. And hopefully I will be able to go back to putting out regular videos very, very soon. So cheers, take care, catch you next time. Bye-bye.